name is Kim Moore, and I've been working with Ilkley Literature Festival to run a 6-week poetry workshop series as career development for emerging and talented artists based in the Northwest. The group of 6 poets have been an absolute pleasure to work with. We've examined different ways of looking in poetry. We've thought about how we can use repetition and silence, how we can turn the ordinary into the extraordinary, and different ways of breaking the line. Halfway through the course, we looked at surrealism as a way of getting away from the self, before looking at how we can work with form in poetry, focusing particularly on my 2 personal favourites, sestinas and speculas. In the final week, all the poets had a chance to bring a poem that they wanted feedback on to share with the group. It's been an absolute honour to run the workshops, and this list of thematic concerns and poetic techniques are really only half of the story. I suggested this 6-week format to Ilkley because I believe part of the magic of having 6 weeks with a small group of writers is that you can create a community of like-minded people who can support each other long after the workshops are finished and the tutor has moved on. I've seen the group really grow in confidence, both in their own abilities, but also their confidence and their trust in each other. Here's what the poets said about the experience.
Hello, I'm Joe Williams, a writer from Leeds. It's been fantastic to have the opportunity to take part in Kim's workshops. It's great to explore some new ideas and try different techniques.
I'm so grateful to the Ilkley Literature Festival and Kim Moore for this fantastic series of workshops, which has made me view poetry in a whole new way, even after writing it for years and studying at university.
I was lucky enough to be invited by Ilkley Literature Festival to join a series of online poetry workshops with Kim Moore this summer. It was wonderful to work with such a varied group of talented poets.
So thanks to Ilkley Literature Festival and Kim for making it happen. I feel like I've got a lot out of it.
Kim's teaching, resources, encouragement and the poetry she's introduced us to have been invaluable. And being part of such an enthusiastic, talented, knowledgeable group has made me feel really lucky each Monday.
Kim introduced us to the work of some wonderful writers, and the resulting workshops were both stimulating and inspiring.
Just like to say thank you to Kim Moore and everyone at Ilkley for making these workshops happen. They've been brilliant.
Martha Boyd's poem And is a sestina that marries form and content perfectly, using this most obsessive of forms to write about anxiety. Her imagery is always surprising, and the reader never quite knows where the next sentence will lead them. But the form itself, with its repeating 6 words, recreates that claustrophobic anxiety that's being examined.
I would be grateful if you could write me a transcript of what you think about everything. Me, dogs, decisions, and how to cope with skin. Existing without scratching, relationships into flakes of dandruff, numbing the scalp to what's underneath, the bits you can't hear. I wish you'd been there because I couldn't hear what the doctor said to me. My head didn't feel right. There was a rushing of noise and my vision went numb, yellow and primitive Microsoft. It was nothing, I think, but that could be the prescription price because I still scratch at the thought of talking to my manager or even you, and I hope you'll be home by 6 to proofread my message. And will you go for a walk with me after dinner? I don't feel safe here, but I need the alpacas to distract me from scratching. I need to relearn Snow White, singing birds, and how to write about anything but this. So if I could see how you think, maybe I could write in your voice. Step 1 for numbing me. If I could, I'd understand and excuse your numbing of sentences. The ones you leave out confuse me and make me think of the next unannounced holiday. And I think, what if this one doesn't end? Please think aloud so I don't have to hear the thoughts I think you think. I worry even when I think moving is right. I watch the sun pirouette on the waves of your hair and the sea, scratch the surface with the same elegance as your skimmer, until the stone scratches the head of a dolphin and the whole ocean rises against you, numbing every part of you with jellyfish things that you deserve. I knew it wasn't right to move to Brittany. Your head was too full of croissants, sand dunes and dolphins to consider jellyfish and sunburn. I'm scared to put a conch to my ear in case it criticises rather than playing the sounds of the sea. I think it would tell me off for thinking too much, but I don't think I know how, even with sand on my skin, to stop scratching. Don't know how to lie on the bay and sing a sweet song about being here. You seem to think here, the unfamiliar notes of their tongue will numb the lumps of eczema that I have become, but I kindle and set a light lust in the orchestra, on fire as you ask if I'm all right. I don't hear what you say when my head's smoked out from thinking. It doesn't feel right that I'm a Wurlitz, a lobster, boiling and scratching at the pan, while you're a numb crab in a conch and...
Claire Lynn's Destina, Natural Materials, is a detailed and fascinating examination of the work and life of the artist Gillian Genser. I love the playfulness with which Claire has approached the form here, using homophones with great skill and dexterity, so much so that the constraints of the sestina seem to fade into the black background.
You never wanted to be a sculptor in metal, pouring molten bronze into wooden shells of rammed sand. You use what is found in the open air, what lives in the sea or is left on the shore. In Toronto's Chinatown, you bulk buy mussels, eating moule marinière and moule au naturel 3 times a week, for it seems to you natural to make art from their shells, more precious than metal. Iridescent or inky, the common blue mussel shades indigo to violet when you polish its shell. They grow clustered on ropes a few miles offshore and are pulled from the water to the land and the air. For 12 hours a day, you sand shells and the air in your studio thickens with dust. To achieve a natural look, you overlap them like scales. Making sure each is ground to a perfect fit, you're on your metal, feathering them into place shell by shell till they shimmer like the rippling muscles of a man you've spent years creating from mussel shells. But now here are shocks your flesh is heir to. Waves of pain crash, breaching the shell of your skull. Your mind is gripped by unnatural fears. Deaf in one ear, vomiting, the taste of metal in your salt dry mouth, you're cast up on a desert shore. When they can't find a cause, how can you be sure you're not being poisoned? The ache in your muscles, your psychotic symptoms indicate toxins, heavy metals. Arsenic and lead are thick in your blood from the air that you breathe. And yet, you work only with natural materials, creating a man shaped out of shells. You imagine yourself holding a shell to your ear, hoping to hear sounds of the shore as a sign that all's well in the natural world, deafened instead by the silence of mussels, not the lapping of waves in the conch's trapped air. When the ocean's polluted with toxic metals, filter-feeding mussels accumulate metal in their shells where they grow just offshore. Is nothing left natural on land, sea or air?
Rebecca Green's work often explores the connection between the body and mental health. In the poem you're about to hear her read, we're presented with a series of startling images and haunting lines that ask us to consider the body in moments of vulnerability.
Some nights I fall asleep, dressed in the body of the day, upright and formal, my grandfather in the war. My eyes don't even close, staring somnambulance creeps like an oil spill, I drown inside its viscous sprawl. Some nights I don't sleep, propped corpse in dress shoes, shining in bedside lamplight, open curtain moonlight, cracked eyesight. my mind, it chimes, victim of the dancer on a musical box. Some nights I fall asleep, worn like a diamond at the throat of my mother. Sometimes I glint, sometimes I crack her collarbone. But I am laid like a gift of splendid burden, just like the moment of my very first beat. Some nights I swallow sleep, adorned as it is with foil from the pill strip, a humming effervescence spiking my blood, blinds drawn down, and vividly I dream of electric blue, clementine hue, and in moments of madness, you.
Joe Williams' poems are often filled with a wry humour. They like to poke fun at the pompous and those who take themselves too seriously, as you'll hear in his monologue in the voice of the acting treasurer of the British Federation of Dragons and Wyverns. But as you'll see from his second poem, he can also write with great tenderness, vulnerability and lyricism.
There are more of us than you think, especially near Ipswich, where the BFDW is based. We moved there in the 90s when a government grant was available. Some of our members were very upset. There's been a long-standing campaign to move HQ back to Wales. The National Association of Gnomes, Goblins and Sprites, NAGS for short, are up the road in Bury St Edmunds. They got the same grant. It wasn't specifically aimed at cryptozoological creatures. That was just a coincidence. You know, I hate that TV show Dragon's Den, bane of my life. You wouldn't believe the emails I get asking if we can finance someone's start-up street food business or range of children's toys. The truth is, dragons are neither keen nor wise investors. I personally have some money in a fixed-term cash ISA, and we do offer a pension scheme as one of our members' benefits. It's never been as much of a draw as the public liability insurance. Anyway, enough of me prattling on about dragons. What about you? What do you do? A writer, you say? Interesting. I've got this idea for a book. It's all true, all true. The second poem is called Scheherazade. We met on the town hall steps, dressed as agreed in evening wear and the certainty of youth. We rode Sinbad's ship through the Gulf of Oman, out into the ocean and over its edge. We rode on the wind the young prince and princess, held up by strings and brass section breath. I'd have stayed with you for 1,000 nights.
I love the dark humour at work in Freya Jackson's poems. Each one creates its own inner world that is both utterly recognisable and completely strange, and her language is always alive and crackling with originality and energy.
Hello, my name is Freya Jackson and this is my poem Happy, after Mary Ruthell. After my grandmother's illness, I was happy. I bought a child's packet of animal socks and wore them in pairs. Sometimes I let the tiger sock chase the monkey shock and served it to my grandmother on a tea tray. Zoom goes the rocket ship, I explained to her, where I pour soup on her too big dress. I was so happy I decided to make a podcast about the moon and send it to the moon without worrying the moon would get a big head and stay swollen and full and never wax or wane again, and all the werewolves would get so bored they would start writing sestinas, which I would then have to critique in workshops without enough relevant life experience to let the sestinas move me. I was so happy I learnt to love reading werewolf sestinas and created a new book only for sestinas written by werewolves, and I was so happy I didn't mind when the werewolves started to question why I was curating werewolf sestinas instead of spending time with my grandmother, who kept calling my name from her bedroom in a voice small and scuffed as a mouse's shoe, asking for me to cut up melon slices for her and clean the kitchen floor, and I was so happy I didn't mind, and I allowed the floor to clean itself like Jake Gyllenhaal said his skin did. and everyone cared so much, one way or another, about Jake Gyllenhaal's skin, or why the moon had not moved for months. But I didn't care. I was so happy. How the light bulb was invented. Falling out of love and out of bed one day, the witch left all hopes of her future with her lover snuffed in her empty wineglass and reached for sleep instead. But still sleepless, her hopes walked up to the ceiling and tripped over themselves to mark out some other future where things were better for the witch. Or at least she was with her lover and they were happy, which may or may not have been the same thing. The witch could not be sure, as all her old hopes skittered on like a light, or like a light would have been to the witch if the witch would have had a light back then. This was before they had invented light. They had invented stars, but those were only atoms of carbon brushing against each other, remembering gravity, which is another way of saying love, attraction forever jostling over density, then falling onto each other in a series of awkward calculations. Once the witch had brought down one of those hot, empty stars to her lover, only to watch her fall in love with the river instead, which did not reflect anything back then in the dark past. And so, to make a long story shorter, the witch let it all hang over her. And afterwards the man, isn't it always a man, who bought the house, thought her illumination of it was so swell, he decided to start to sell it with a swing, and electricity came later as a simplification of regret. Now, lying in our storied houses, we declare how easy it is. You can just turn it off.
The two poems you'll hear by Georgie Evans have a wonderful quality of stillness about them. In Revolution, I love the way she's experimented with punctuation to create different meanings, all whilst being held in the tight container of the specular. In The Exact Place of Self-Destruction, I love how the gaze of the poem suddenly seems to turn towards the audience or reader as she asks us to please move along.
Hi there, I'm Georgie Evans and I'm going to read two poems. The first one is called The Exact Place of Self-Destruction. This land has no map. You'll be crawling, picking up the toothpick flags I pinned in the floorboards. Try looking in a bag of laundry, the proof of days in t-shirts and underwear. Try looking in the country where time runs itself flat like a rolled out carpet. You'll smell it where the blood comes. If you reach my body, you might feel the potholes and the tracks old thorns have left. The exact place is where I never find anyone, so I didn't want to see you. Please move along. And my second poem is called Revolution. My mind is on. Fire in a matchbox will weep shimmering oil. My eyes, with their foxtail reflections, cannot close. To the skies, they can see what I refuse. Watch my cells hiss while I exit through the flame. Oh, it is still happening. Exit through the flame while I refuse. Watch my cells hiss. They can see what I cannot. Close to the skies with their foxtail reflections. My eyes will weep shimmering oil in a matchbox. My mind is on fire.
Thank you to the 6 wonderful poets that I've been working with over these past few months. Martha Boyd, Georgie Evans, Rebecca Green, Freya Jackson, Claire, Lynn and Joe Williams. I know we'll be seeing and hearing their names more and more in the future. Thank you to Ilkley Literature Festival for inviting me to work on this project with them. And finally, thank you to the audience for listening.